Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us for our ON1 2021 live event. My name is Dylan Kotecki. I'm one of the software and video educators here at ON1. I'm joined by none other than Mr. Dan Harlacher here.
Hi everybody, thanks for coming today.
We have some amazing new features to show you guys today, but before we do that, I just want to let everyone know that the webinar is being recorded, so if you do need to miss out on anything, we're going to post it to our site later today and you can watch it in its entirety. Also, we have a lot to get through today, so we're going to be answering all of the questions at the end. Now, we do have a Q&A inside of Zoom and YouTube, so if you do need an immediate answer to a question, feel free to go in there and we do have people moderating those questions. If you're not familiar with ON1 Photo Raw 2021, it allows you to capture, organize, edit, enhance, and share your imagery. It combines the simplicity of a photo browser, the power of a raw processor, an effects and retouching engine, all inside a layered, non-destructive workflow on all of your devices. And these are all of the amazing features that we're going to talk to you about today. But one that we want to touch on quickly right out of the gate is the new ON1 Portrait AI feature. Since most of you have pre-ordered and are already using it, we figured that would be a great way to start and showcase all of the awesome new features within Portrait AI.
Yeah, and Portrait AI is really near and dear to my heart. I've been a portrait photographer for many years. My wife and I even own a studio, and we just know the pain the photographers experience having to try to do all that retouching. It's lots of layers and brushing. It's just a ton of work. You know, even someone who's really good in Photoshop doing a quick retouch is going to take about 3 minutes per photo. Lightroom, same thing, with half the tools you actually need to do a good job for it. So what we set out to do was build a tool that could automatically find all the faces in your photos, automatically figure out what kind of retouching needs to be done and do it for you, and let you do that across the whole folder at once. It's pretty crazy. So let's see it in action.
Yeah. So ON1 Portrait AI allows you to basically go in and modify your portraits without having to go in and adjust any of the masking or identify any of the facial features. It just finds it for you. The great thing that I love about using ON1 Portrait AI is it really just allows you to pull up on a slider and then you can see the adjustment applied. You don't actually have to go in and mask anything or incorporate any different elements into your scene. It just does it all for you. So real quickly, I'm just going to choose AI Auto. That's going to bring out my basic tone and color for my scene. And then to retouch, I can just head over to Portrait AI, and that's automatically going to find all of the faces within my portrait and apply the perfect amount of skin retouching to it. So let me just zoom in real quick here. And now if I turn off this ON1 Portrait AI filter, you can see it's applying a little bit of retouching and some detail to the eyes, but we can always fine-tune this to create the look that we're going for. So inside of this ON1 Portrait AI filter, we have this new retouching slider that we can use to really modify all of the retouching within our scene. So if I want to apply more retouching, I can just pull up on this retouching slider, and that's going to modify all of these detail sliders in here. So it's basically controlling all of the retouching within my scene.
Yeah, and the AI actually sets those sliders inside of that roll-up for you automatically based on what it identifies as the person. So you don't really have to go and adjust those very often. A lot of times it's just that main retouching slider is all you really need to do.
Exactly.
But if you want to fine-tune it, you can go in and adjust those.
Exactly. Yeah, if you want to fine-tune the details and actually the retouching method, you can always do that. There's also two different methods now. There's our surface blur, which you're probably familiar with if you've used Photo Raw in previous versions. And then we have this new frequency separation, which acts more like the airbrush look that's so popular in portraits these days. Well, just because we're watching in Zoom and we're broadcasting this webinar, I'm going to pull up on the blemishes just quite a bit so that we can see what's going on. I'll add in a little more detail, and that's just going to act as my retouching. So if I turn this off and on now, it's doing a great job at retouching and smoothing out that skin. Well, inside Portrait AI, we don't actually have to mask on or identify any of these facial features. They're found for us. So if I want to lively up any of these facial features, let's say I want to brighten up my face and add in some detail to the eyes, I can do that just by pulling up on a slider. So I can pull up on my brightness slider for the face. That adds in light into our facial area, and it doesn't incorporate light anywhere else because it's already masked. We can also slim the face. Let's say our client's looking to slim the face a bit. I can just slim the face out just by that one slider. And any of these different sliders we can use to modify our portrait, and it's all identified right out of the gate. So let's just go in here. I'm going to pull up on the whitening a bit to the eyes. I'll add in some detail, and it may be a bit too strong, but again, I'm just doing it quite intense so that we can see what's going on within Zoom. And I'm going to pull up on this brow enhance slider, and that's going to enhance the eyebrows a bit and add some detail up there as well. Now, I don't think we need to modify too much of the mouth. I'm just going to pull up on this vibrance, and that's going to add in a bit more color to that mouth area. So now if we turn off this Portrait AI filter, it's doing an amazing job at smoothing out those details within the shot and removing all of those small imperfections within the scene. And another cool feature within ON1 Portrait AI or in ON1 Photo Raw 2021 is we can batch process portraits in an instant. So if I want to go through and apply the same look to all of the portraits within my shoot, I can just pull up my film strip view mode, I'll select all of these images, and I can just sync those settings directly to those photographs.
And I know just how long that takes to do. If you were to do that kind of retouching manually, again, it's going to take quite a bit of time. And there's an expectation today that any photos you show your client are retouched. That's everything they see in media. Everything they see on Instagram or in a magazine has been highly retouched. So people think they actually look like that.
Yeah.
But out of the camera, those photos require retouching. So photographers find themselves staying up till midnight at night, going through and retouching photos by hand before they show them to the client, even though they haven't even sold those pictures yet. So this allows you to do all of it automatically without having to do any brushing, any layers. You can batch process the whole shoot, finds every face in every photo, even in a complex photo where you might have a bride and a groom or even a family scene. It identifies each face and does the right thing on each face. It's the only tool that can do that for you. Let's take a look at some of the results when we actually synchronize that setting across multiple photos.
Yeah, like Dan was saying, it's just incredibly helpful without having to go in and identify facial features or anything like that. So if I view the original for some of these images in our shoot here, it's doing an awesome job at going in there and finding the face for me and applying those skin retouching details to it. So that's ON1 Portrait AI, a really powerful tool and handy tool for photographers looking to really just batch process or retouch a complete shoot in seconds. There's also another cool feature within ON1 Photo Raw 2021 that I want to show you guys real quick, and that's the custom brush shapes. So with custom brush shapes, it allows you to incorporate different creative elements onto your scene just by brushing. So if you want to add on any trees to your landscape, you can incorporate maybe some eyelash detail into a portrait. There's many different capabilities with these custom brush shapes. Let me show you how to modify a landscape and add in some creative elements to your sky. So inside Photo Raw 2021, I'm just going to grab this landscape, I'll head into my edit module, and we can start getting creative with this landscape using our custom brush shapes. The first thing I want to do is just pull out the tonalities within the scene real quick. So I'm going to do that automatically with my handy dandy AI auto button here. That's just going to bring out those tonalities within my shot so that it's correctly exposed. Now let's head into my local adjustments tab. So with my landscape here, I see I have a little bit of interest in my sky, but there's mainly just blue up there. So I want to add in some creative elements, and I'm going to do that using my local adjustments. Let's just grab a cloud color here with our color dropper. And then I can head up to my shape menu here, and I have all of these creative brush shapes I can use to apply different elements onto my scene. Well, because I'm dealing with clouds, I'm going to go into my cloud area, and I'll choose this cloud shape here. And inside Photo Raw 2021, we can actually modify the angle as well. So if I need to rotate this brush, I can just do that with the keyboard on my computer. I'll just make it a little bit bigger, and we can stamp in a nice cloud to our scene. And I can just do the same thing with other clouds. So I'll head up to my shape, I'll grab another cloud, I'll emulate this cloud to the right, these smaller clouds over there. Maybe make it a little bit smaller. And I'm going to double click this one just to paint in a little bit extra. So now we have that nice cloud shape that matches all those other areas. We'll add in one last cloud here, and I'm just going to apply this to the right area of my scene, just like that. So now we can see that in seconds we've applied different creative elements into that sky and livelied up that background for our landscape. Now I'm just going to apply a preset real quick just to stylize. I'll use one of my favorite categories, this vivid landscape. And this VL7 does an awesome job at just stylizing quickly. And look at that. In just a few seconds, we've livened up all of the elements within our scene and added a creative background to it.
That's pretty cool. I mean, you just enhanced an existing sky rather than actually replacing
Exactly.
it. So it tends to look a little more realistic than putting in a completely fake sky where the lighting or the color might not match.
Exactly. And you can modify, the color within your brushes, the feathering to make it as natural or unnatural as you'd like.
Yeah. And that's just one example of what you can do with the brushes. There's so many different shapes that you can do. Doing eyelashes on a portrait, enhancing the eyelashes is a pretty easy thing to do. You could add trees along a tree line. You could use it to paint in grass. There's tons of different options you can do with it. And there's a very vibrant community online of brushes that you can purchase and download. There's lots of them that are free that you can add in. Just like you would a background or a border or a texture, you can add those as an extra into Photo Raw. So you have a whole world of different brush shapes and textures that you could paint with.
Yeah. And again, it's just as easy as picking a color and painting it on your photograph.
Yeah. All right, next up, let's talk about the new Smart Organize feature. What Smart Organize does is it helps you go through your photo library, look for duplicates, look for photos that are similar to each other, things that are shot at the same time or the same place to help you pick the best photo, get rid of duplicates, and pick the best out of a series of photos. So let me kind of show you how it works here. I'm just going to jump into Photo Raw. I have this one particular folder. It's actually all the photos I've shot with my iPhone over the years. I think a lot of us kind of have this. It's kind of it's like the junk drawer of your photography collection. I know there's some good photos in there, there's a lot of junk, and it's just way too much work to try to go through and figure those out. So I'm going to use Smart Organize. I'm going to use it first to help me find all the duplicates. Duplicates happen when you have multiple hard drives or you accidentally download the same photo twice. I do that a lot with my phone, or I'll accidentally get 2 copies for some reason, or I exported it from Apple Photos or something. Who knows? You end up with duplicates a lot of the time. So one of the cool things you can do is find those dupes. So let me show you how it works here. I'm inside of Photo Raw. I've picked the photos I'm going to work with. I'm actually going to use Show Subfolder Contents. You can see there's about 11,000 photos that we're looking at right now that are across, 10 years of pictures from my iPhone. I'm just going to click over here on the new Smart Organize button. It looks like a little smart light bulb. And then I choose what mode I want to work in. So I'm going to search my current photos. You could also search any of your catalog folders or even a drive or folder that you pick. I'm just going to look in the photos that we're looking at right now. And I'm going to use the duplicate photos mode. And I'll hit find. So what it's going to do is it's going to go through all those 11,000 photos and it's going to look for photos that are duplicates. Now that's a lot more than just looking for matching file names. The names could get renamed. So it looks at the capture date when it was taken. So obviously to be a duplicate photo, it's got to be taken at the same time, right? So it's going to look at that. It's going to look at the size, the orientation. It's going to look at the file name, but it'll look for file names that are similar to it. So whether the extension changed, or you added a 1, or copy, or final, or composite, any word that you would have stuck in with that file name, it will use that as well. So if we look back over here, here's the result of my duplicate search. It found 147 pairs of duplicates in that 11,000 photos. Now, in a lot of cases, I have some RAW plus JPEGs. At the time, I had a new camera. I wasn't quite sure how much I liked it, so I was shooting RAW plus JPEG at the same time.
Gotta make sure.
Yeah, so it's gone through, and it'll find all those RAW plus JPEGs for me. It'll also find other things where there's a duplicate. Like, here's an example. Here's image 3128 and 3128 space 1. It happened to have been a dupe that happened from a naming convention thing. So what I can do is I just turn on the auto mark feature. It's actually on already. And what auto mark does is it goes through and it analyzes each pair and it picks the best one of the pair for you automatically. And that's done based on these rules. There's a set of rules that we've come up with that you can control their order. We kind of get you started with what we think are the best options. But for example, it's going to go through and it's going to pick a RAW photo over a JPEG photo, or it's going to pick an edited photo over an unedited photo, or the biggest photo versus the smallest photo, for example. You have control over how AutoMark works, what the rules are each time that you use it.
And you can always turn them off too.
Yeah, you can always do this manually, and you can do it. This makes it a lot faster, because the last thing I want to do is have to go through these 150 groups and pick the best one manually out of it. So with AutoMark, it's going to go through and you can see it's put a little check mark on the one that it thinks is the loser, the one that doesn't win within each set. So, the RAW is better than the JPEG in this comparison. And then all I have to do is I can just click right down here on reject all marked photos, and it'll take all those ones that are marked and it will change their reject flag to reject. Or if I'm brave, I can change the reject mode to delete, and it will actually then go through and it will just delete all of those duplicates for me automatically. Very quick, great way to go through and resolve duplicates quickly. But there's another mode. Let me show you another scenario where you could use this. And this is when you come back from a shoot. A lot of us when we shoot, especially if you're a landscape or a portrait photographer, you're shooting a lot of shots of the same scene and a lot of shots of another scene and a lot of shots of another scene. What would be great is if something could find the beginning and end of each of those groups and categorize them for you and then help you pick the best within each of those groups. That's something else that it can do. So I'm going to go back and let's grab, I've got another folder in here from a shoot. In the Plus, I've got about 800 different photos in here. What I want to be able to do is go through all of these and pick out just the similar photos. So I'm going to open up the Smart Organize. I'm going to pick similar appearance this time, and we'll press find. It'll now go through all of those photos, and it will match them based on their visual similarity to each other. You can see how fast that was. It actually goes through and analyzes each photo and can group them together. So it knows that these two photos look really similar to each other. Now I can pick out the best one. I can use the compare view for doing that. I'll just go into compare view. Lets me zoom in on each photo, and I could pick out whichever one was the sharpest, or whichever one had the best composition, the best eyes, the best smile, for example, and I just mark the one that I want to get rid of. So to me, I happen to like the one with a little bit more detail on the highlights on the left, so I'm just going to mark the one without. That's the one that I'm going to get rid of, and then I can move on to the next group. I just push the next button, and it'll go through and it will show me all the photos in the next group, and you just repeat that as you go. So that'll help you find the best photo within a group. It also helps you to organize those groups. I could hit the new subfolder button, and it will take all those photos and put it into a new subfolder for me automatically. The cool thing about subfolders in Photo Raw is we really treat them like a stack would in Lightroom. You can still see that subfolder within your grid view. You can still set the name of it. You can also even set the poster frame for it, so what it represents. So it works the same way, but the cool thing is it's really organized that way on disk. So if you ever go to another system, or if you go to the operating system, it'll be organized the same way. You're not going to lose those stacks if you go someplace else. All right, so that's kind of smart organizing, some of the cool stuff that you can do with that. The next thing I want to show you guys, the next thing I want to show you guys is the new spot healing tool. Now, Photo Raw has always had lots of great tools for removing spots and blemishes and power lines, things like that. We've built a whole new tool for removing blemishes in a non-destructive, re-editable way. So let me show you how this works. So the new spot healing tool lives right here under the retouch tool group, and it works easily just by painting over what you want to remove, and then you pick the area to fill it with. Think of it kind of like a clone stamp tool, but in reverse. So if I wanted to remove somebody from the scene, I simply just paint over them with the tool, and then I move the source pixels to fill in the destination pixels. And it will intelligently blend those two areas together. You don't have to worry about things like opacity or blending or anything for it. It just walks the edge of the selection and blends the two together automatically. So if I wanted to remove another section, I would just paint right over it, just like that. Find a good spot to fill it in with, and again, it'll fill and match for me automatically. My areas can even overlap each other, and I can even do difficult things that need to align, like this edge. I can just dial in a section that fills it in and looks realistic, just like that. So there you go. You can see I removed 3 or 4 people. The grass still looks realistic, the edge is repeated correctly, and if I decide to make a mistake, I can always go back and adjust those later. If I go back and I grab that spot healing tool and I mouse over my photo, I'll see the markers for each of those spots. I can realign them or even delete spots that I don't want to. Now keep in mind the little markers are extra big today because I've turned up my cursor size for the recording. When you're recording at a normal size, those little spots are going to be quite a bit smaller. Slideshow. It was smoother if you can edit it out.
Yeah.
All right, next up is slideshow and full screen mode. With full screen mode, you can actually hide all the chrome in the scene so that you can see just the photo you're working on. So normally when you look at a photo in Photo Raw, you'll see a lot of controls on the left and the right. Even if I hit the tab key, there's still going to be some of those window controls there. I can now use the full screen mode, which is Shift F, or if you go up to your window menu, you can pick full screen preview mode, and it will actually hide everything and let me just look at my photo. The cool thing about this is it's a great way to hide all of that distraction and see just the photo. And you can actually toggle between photos in this mode if I wanted to. So if I wanted to compare 2 different photos, I can easily just arrow between those guys. And if I was working on a photo, let's say I wanted to work on a photo, maybe this one right here. Let's say if I'm in edit, I'm working on a small laptop with like a 13-inch screen, there's not a whole lot of room to be able to work. Well, I can just go into that full screen mode again. It will hide everything, but I still have my tool options bar so that I actually have the things I need to adjust my tool, and I can still come in here and I can still paint away and still use all of the tools just like I was in the normal mode, just like that. But it goes beyond full screen preview. You can also use it as a slideshow. There's a new quick slideshow mode. So let's say I wanted to take a look at all of these photos. I'm just going to select them all, and I'll go to quick slideshow. Now with slideshow, you can have it advance automatically, or you can set a timing. I'm going to leave it at 5 seconds, and you can also add a transition, a nice elegant fade between photos. So now when I start my slideshow, it'll go into full screen mode, and it will actually show the photo, wait 5 seconds, then do a nice transition to the next photo. Again, wait 5 seconds. You guys get the idea, just like that. So great way to quickly show your photos to a client without having to go to another slideshow app or have to go through all the production time for it. All right, now let's talk about a really crazy new tool. This is the color sensitive gradient masks. Now, you've all used the masking bug inside of Photo Raw for many years for creating gradients, either round or linear gradients. Now you can actually combine it with a color range mask as well. And it basically squares the power of this tool when you do it. Let me give you a couple examples. Here, I'll open this photo into Edit. I'm just going to hit AI Auto. That's going to help my photo out a lot. It's automatically brought up the brightness in the foreground, but you can see the sky is still a little bit overexposed. So I'm going to use a local adjustment to darken down the sky. So I'll grab the local adjustment. I'm going to grab my gradient tool, and I'm just going to click on the photo. I'm going to rotate this guy around here. There we go. Now, you'll notice when I did that, it darkened the trees a little bit too. Let me turn it on and off so you can see. So you can see it's done a good job of darkening the sky, but it's also darkened the trees. I don't want it to darken the trees. So watch, I'm just going to turn the color range option on. And automatically, it's limited the color range to what's underneath the center of the control. So it's picking up that white-blue color from the sky, and it's only going to apply the adjustment to that range. And if I hit the O key on my keyboard, I can actually see the mask that is generated, and I can even adjust the range that it's going to apply to using the range slider. So I can dial in just the mask that I want to darken that sky. I didn't have to use any brushes, I didn't have to use any layers. I was able to do that all in one spot very easily and non-destructively.
And you can also do that with filters as well. So if you're using the masking bug on filters, such as dynamic contrast for whatever reason, you can apply that with your color range gradients.
Yeah, let me show you another example, because there's also a round shape. So if I wanted to use that just to affect a smaller area, I can do that too. So I've got this picture of this Dutch baby. I like it, except for the blueberries are a little dead. They kind of look like blawberries, I guess. So we want to make them look a little bit better. So I'm just going to use my local adjustment. Let's get it ready first. So what I really want to do is I want to add a little structure. I want to cool it off a little bit and increase the saturation. Now let's apply that. I'm just going to grab my gradient tool. I'm going to set it to the round shape, and I'm just going to click on one of those blueberries. So there you go. You can see how it's only applied to the center, and then when I turn on that color range option, you'll see how it removes it from everything except for the blue automatically. Let's take a look at that mask. There we go. You can see how it's applied just to the blue, and if I was to move this around, it will resample the color each time I move it to dial in just the color range that I want. So there we go. Let's turn that on and off. There's before. And after,
wow,
I was able to affect all those blueberries. I didn't have to use a brush and go through and manually brush every one of those little berries for it.
Just basically group them into one adjustment.
It's basically a color range that's limited by that gradient. It's a very powerful little tool. Next up, we've brought back color fill layers. Color fill layers are a normal layer in your layer stack that you can flood with any color and then treat it just like any other photo. They're limitless in terms of what you can do. I'm going to use it in this case to show you how to make a quick senior composite. So I've got my photo open up here in Edit. I'm going to change my canvas size. So go up to canvas size. Let's make this a normal page size, about 8.5 by 11. Horizontal, 300 pixels per inch. There we go. So now we've made a horizontal canvas to work on. I'm going to use my transform tool to make this photo a little bit smaller so it fits it better here. And let's rotate it a little bit too. Let's go like that. Have a little jaunty angle in there. Cool. Now, instead of that transparent background, I want to be able to put a color or maybe even a texture behind it. So watch. We'll just click on the color fill layer button. I pick the color that I want to use. Let's go with a nice dark gray. There we go. And you see how it's created a new layer and it's flooded it with that color. And I can go back and change that color, of course. And I need to move it. It's covering up my picture, so I'm just going to drag that layer down in the layer stack. So now it sits below the photo. And like I mentioned, it's just like any other layer. I can go through and use any of the tools that I have inside of Photo Raw, like a texture. Let's go to Effects. Let's add a texture filter to it. There we go. I'm going to open up my presets. That makes it a little easier for me to go and shop through these different presets. So I can just click on these and it'll actually apply underneath the photo, and I just kind of pick one that I like that looks good to me. That was not bad. Let's see, what else do we have? Kind of like that concrete.
I do like the concrete a lot, yeah.
About crumpled paper. No, that's too dark.
Oh, I like that. I like that dark
There's
concrete.
kind of a nice dark concrete. Let's go for that. And I could actually compound those. I could put as many textures on there as I wanted to kind of come up with my own texture. There we go. And now let's finish off the photo just by adding a preset to it. Even though that photo is a layer of its own that is smaller than the canvas and is at a cockeyed angle, I can still add presets to it, and it's smart enough to know that. So let's go, and I'm going to add a black and white preset. Oh, maybe this one right here.
Nice.
So it's found the photo layer, it's automatically done all the stuff to it. So I was able to create a cool composite very quickly. Here, let's do full screen. Here's a great way to look at it.
Hey,
there we go.
Great.
Just like that. And you can use those color fill layers for a lot of things. In this case, we used it to create a background, but you can also use it as an overlay. You could put it over the top of a photo, and you can also paint with that solid color using the new custom brush shapes. So let's say I wanted to paint with a texture or paint with a brush. I can easily use that color fill layer, invert it on the mask, and paint in whatever color I want with it. So it's very flexible, very powerful tool. All right, there's some other tools inside of Photo Raw 2021 that we don't have time to show you today, but I want to tell you about them. One is the new Replace Color filter in Effects. This makes it really easy to pick a color in a photo and totally change its color. Not just an adjacent color, but to a completely different color if you wanted to. There's so many uses for this. I use it with yellow grass to make yellow grass look green. It's a lot cheaper than watering your lawn. You could also use it for fall leaves. You want to take a yellow leaf, make it look orange. Or maybe you want to completely change the color of a piece of apparel. You know, you've got someone wearing a green shirt, and you want to make it a red shirt. That's something you can do very easily. You just click on the shirt, drag the hue slider to whatever color you want it to be. It's a very quick way to change the color of a subject. There's also the new camera-based presets. This actually allows you to pick an individual camera, even a camera based on its serial number, and then apply whatever settings you want to it automatically. So this can be very useful if you've converted one of your cameras to infrared, for example. You could create an infrared preset using the channel mixer that would do the channel swap effect that you need, and then every time you see a new picture from that camera serial number, it'll apply your preset to it automatically. Another scenario is, let's say you've got 2 or 3 different cameras in your studio and you want them all to look the same. If you use the X-Rank color calibration tool, you've built a custom profile for each camera, make a preset that applies that profile to each camera, and they'll all look very similar to each other. It's another great way to normalize your different cameras within a studio. We've also added batch for HDR and for panoramas. Super easy to use. Just organize your brackets into subfolders, select the top level folder, and say make these HDR. It'll go into each subfolder, find all the photos in the bracket, and create a new non-destructive on photo that you can go back and make adjustments to later. It's very fast, and it's a huge time saver, especially if you're like a real estate photographer. Yeah.
No, it is. Yeah, definitely saves a ton of time going in and just batch processing HDR. There you go.
Yeah. All right. Now, a lot of what we've talked about has been all inside of the standalone version of Photo Raw, and we know a lot of you guys use it that way, but it's a much bigger world when it comes to photographers. There's a lot of people who use this as plugins, and if you go all the way back to the very beginning days of ON1, we've always supported plugins. We've always supported alternate workflows. So of course you can do all of this inside of Photo Raw, but you can also access these tools inside of Photoshop or Photoshop Elements, inside of Lightroom Classic or Apple Photos, and now we've added support for Affinity Photo, Corel Paint Shop Pro, and very soon Capture One. This actually allows you to access all of these tools, things like HDR, things like Portrait AI. Imagine being able to use Portrait AI inside of Lightroom on a whole folder of photos. It's going to really make your workflow a lot faster. All right, now there's a lot more than just the desktop side when it comes to Photo Raw 2021. There's also some really big changes to our mobile application, Photo Raw 2021 for mobile. So let's take a look at some of those. So you can get it in the App Store or Google Play if you don't have it. It'll run on just about any iOS, iPad OS, or Android that is a modern generation product that has a camera built into it. Let's talk about some of the new features. So first off, search and filter.
So with the search and filter feature inside ON1 Photo RAW for mobile, it allows you to search for photographs like you normally would inside of the desktop app. So let's say you want to search for your photographs that you've loved. You can just click on the heart and this will show you all of those images. If you want to search for an image, let's say a beach image, you can just type in beach and you have all of these different images that come up with that tag on them. You can just access it right away just by clicking on it. So it makes it incredibly a useful tool, especially if you have a bunch of different images that are tagged different ways. You can just find them immediately by going into the search and filter tool.
Yeah, especially if you've gone through and you've done like your stars or you've done your hearts. It's a great way to pick just the ones that you actually care about. Now we've also added local adjustments. So the same local adjustments that you've been doing on the desktop, you can now do with your finger on side of your phone or on your tablet. And with a perfect brush built in, it's amazing. You actually get very high quality masks just using your finger. So watch how this works.
So inside ON1 Photo RAW for mobile, I'm just going to grab this image here, and like Dan was saying, it's incredibly easy to apply a local adjustment. So if I want to lighten up my foreground or even my background, I can do that just by brushing my finger. I'm just going to grab my local adjustments here, and we're going to start with this one just by painting it in without using the perfect brush. So I'm just going to grab my brush here, make sure I have it selected. I'm going to increase my brush size a bit. You can see that in that red, it's showing me the size of my brush. I also want to make sure that my feathering is at 100 just so I have a nice natural brush edge. And then I can just paint this on to my foreground here, just like that. And then we can pull up on the exposure a little bit, maybe add in some midtones, some shadow tones. And obviously I can pull back on the opacity to make it more natural, but you can see in just a few seconds we painted on that local adjustment and really livened up our foreground. Now, a cool thing about the local adjustments, you can actually paint this on using your perfect brush. So if you wanted this only applied to my foreground and not the sky, I could just fine tune that. We'll just close out of this and I'll grab my perfect brush here. And now I can just paint this on strictly to my foreground and it'll avoid all of those different areas within my sky.
And that's like 10 times more useful when you only have a finger to paint with than on a mouse on a big screen.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy that you can actually get those kind of precision masks just using your finger on a phone.
So now, if I go in here and I pull up on my midtones, it's much more precise, it's dialed in, and I can see every single one of those modifications within that scene right there.
All right, and there's also a ton of new filters. So on top of the ones that we already had in the previous version, we've added the very popular dynamic contrast filter, the ultra powerful curves, plus HDR look and glow. And with those and the existing filters, you can create almost any look you want. All right, so let's take a look at curves, one of the most popular and powerful filters that we have.
So inside ON1 Photo RAW for mobile, I'm just going to grab a photograph here and I'll head into the edit module. And if you've seen any of my tutorials, you know that I love the curves filter. It's one of my all-time favorite filters for photography. I'm just going to use this plus button, can add on that curves filter. And let's give this sort of a faded vintage look. I'm just going to pull up on my black point here. That's going to add some fade. I can control that by pulling down on my shadows here. And then we'll just give it a little bit of a mid-tone boost, like that. So now, in just a few seconds, we've boosted up the tonalities in the shot just by using that curves filter. And with any of these filters, you can always modify the opacity, or you can mask and blend them away. So if I want less of this curves filter, I can just pull back on the opacity, and that will remove some of that filter from my scene.
And you can actually combine the same masking tools that we have on those local adjustments with all of those filters. So the same kind of masking results that you do on the desktop, you can apply on a per filter level or even on your entire stack of filters.
So inside ON1 Photo RAW for mobile, I'm just going to head into my edit module here, and I'm going to add on some dynamic contrast. But I only want that dynamic contrast applied to the foreground. I don't want to crunch up my sky. So let's just add on a ton so we can really see what's going on. I know this is broadcasted through Zoom, so I just want you guys to see what's happening here. So if I turn this off and on, it's obviously really intense. It's applying it to the entire photograph. Well, I only want it applied to my foreground area. So I can mask that on. I'm just going to use my masking brush here. I'll use my perfect brush, and I'll just mask this away from my foreground first. But then I can grab that mask by selecting this. I'll invert this, and that makes sure that it's only applied to my foreground element and it's not applied to the sky. Now I'll just copy that mask. I'll add another filter here. I'll add the glow filter. We'll make it quite intense again, but I only want this applied to the sky. So I'll just go into my gear option, I'll click paste, and now I pasted that mask onto my glow filter. Now we can just invert it. If I turn this off and on now, Now it's only applied to the sky. So now we've taken two different masks and we've applied them to specific areas on our scene just by using our finger in ON1 Photo Raw for mobile.
Wow, that's pretty powerful to have that much flexibility just with your finger
Exactly.
on side of a mobile app. It's
And
just
this
like
could,
being at the desktop.
Yeah, and this could be on your phone too. It doesn't have to be a tablet like this. It could be literally just your phone that you're working on. So.
Yeah. So the other thing is, we have those same spot healing capabilities that I showed you on the desktop. You can actually do the same spot healing tool inside the mobile app now. So you can remove those blemishes you want to get rid of right here too.
So if you have something on your scene that you're just not a fan of or you want to go in and just remove it, we can just head in, we'll zoom into our skateboard here, and let's say we don't want these screws on the trucks. I can just grab my spot healing brush, I'll just brush this on there, and then I can fine tune this to make it look natural. And again, I'm just pulling these basic clone areas and making everything look blended and real.
Now, it really feels like the mobile app has grown up a bunch since June. We've been working really hard. There's a lot of cool new features that are in there, but to me, the one that I actually use the most, even though I'm a guy who loves to get in and tweak with all the controls, is actually presets.
Yeah.
So now that we have all those powerful filters in there, we can start to bring all the filters and all the presets that you've seen on the desktop, you can now adjust on your iPad. So let's take a look at how that works.
So if we open up a photo inside of Photo Raw for mobile, we now have this preset drawer here that we can access to apply any of these awesome presets to our shot. So if I want to apply a black and white, I can just click on my black and white category, and now I have all of these black and white presets I can apply. One of my favorites here is just this mono, and that's just going to monochrome my image out and apply a nice, elegant black and white look to it. Now, even when we apply these presets, we can go in and adjust the strength of it by just clicking on that preset, and I can modify the strength to make it less strong. Another cool thing is I can actually modify the masking of the entire preset on my shot. So if I go into the Effects tab here and I choose the masking on my filters, I can actually modify all of the different filters that are applied to this shot. So I'll just mask this away real quick from the top area, and I'll feather it a bit. And it's only applying that black and white filter to the bottom area of our shot.
We've shown you a lot of really powerful tools that are coming to ON1 Photo Raw 2021 on the desktop, and some really cool stuff on the mobile version as well. Now, if you use ON1 Photo Raw 360, it actually combines the power of those two together. If you're not familiar with 360, it actually helps you to view and organize and share your photos across all of your devices. So the pictures that are on your desktop computer, you can view and edit on your mobile device. Or the pictures you take on your mobile device are automatically sent back and viewable on your desktop. Or what I do now is, rather than taking my laptop on a trip, I just take my iPad. I can take my memory card out, plug it into my iPad. I can download all those full-size raw photos. I can do my culling. I can do some basic editing. I can do my sharing. When I get back to the studio, all the pictures I shot are right there on my desktop waiting for me. So
and all of the non-destructive edits are there as well. So it shows all of the edits that he's been working on as well that you can go back and readjust or remodify. So, for example, that black and white filter, if we don't like how that looks later, we could just go in and remove it, and it's
Yeah, it's a great way to, like I mentioned, get your photos back to your computer. It's a great way to carry your portfolio around, your recent photos you want to work on, or even if you want to do some editing on the go and you don't want to have to bring a computer, just being able to sit in a hammock and work on your iPad, it's pretty handy. And again, 360 gives you that ability. It really combines all of your photos across all of your devices.
ON1 Photo Raw 2021 is available for pre-order today. If you pre-order ON1 Photo Raw 2021, you'll get ON1 Portrait AI. You can start modifying and playing with your portraits, and then you'll get all of those amazing features that we're talking about coming in October.
Yeah, and if you don't have the mobile app, download it now from the Apple App Store or Google Play Store. You can use it for free, and a lot of those great features we showed you are available today.
Thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We hope you have fun with the exciting new features inside Photo Raw 2021. Have a great rest of your weekend, guys.
Yeah, take care.